would be more proof of the criminal nature of what they did. But I want to spend the rest of the podcast on a lawsuit. I just found out about this today that Roger Ver filed. Not a lawsuit, but it's a motion because he's been charged with tax evasion. Roger Ver is one of the earliest Bitcoin pioneers. You know, I've heard him referred to as Bitcoin Jesus. So he was in, you know, early on, like around when I could have got in, right? Way back, right? So he bought a bunch of Bitcoin and I didn't. So he made a lot of money and I missed out on that, I guess. But anyway, but he expatriated. He left the United States, right? Years ago. But when he left, he still had large unrealized gains on his Bitcoin because he got in so early. But when he left, the Bitcoin market wasn't nearly as liquid as it is now. And so, you know, if he would have sold his Bitcoin, he might have crashed the market. And he lays that out in his motion. But the IRS wanted him to pay the exit tax. And so the dispute and the tax evasion charges have to do with evading the exit tax. And so his motion, and a good part of his motion, is that the charges need to be dismissed because the exit tax is unconstitutional. And that's what I want to talk about, because he's 100% right. It is unconstitutional. It's amazing that nobody has challenged it. And I am happy that he's doing that. I mean, in fact, this will be a great accomplishment of Bitcoin. Maybe one of the only real accomplishments is if we can end up getting rid of the excise tax, the exit tax, because of Bitcoin. Now, first of all, there are several reasons I think that the tax is unconstitutional. But on a fundamental level, if we're a free country, if Americans are free, everybody should be free to leave. You want to leave the country, get out, right? I mean, this is not a prison. There shouldn't be an exit tax to leave. You want to leave, go, right? That's what freedom means. You're free to stay and you're free to leave. You shouldn't have to pay a ransom to get out, right? Like this is a giant prison and we have to bribe the guards. Otherwise we can't get out. So the very concept of having to pay a tax to renounce your citizenship is abhorrent to the very nature of the country, of freedom, of our individual liberties that the Constitution is supposed to secure. So for that reason alone, I think that it's not constitutional for the government to try to tax you to leave, because if they're allowed to impose an exit tax, there's no limit to how high that tax could be. And in which case they can effectively make it impossible to leave, right? If the tax were high enough, nobody could get out, right? So if that's the case, you can't even have the ability to put a tax on expatriation, because that means you can prevent expatriation. And, you know, that would obviously be immoral, illegal. So there's that. But the other issue, and I've talked about it on the podcast a lot, has to do with the apportionment clause of the Constitution. The exit tax is not an income tax because you have no income. The exit tax is a property tax. The way the exit tax works, you are supposed to calculate the value of all of your property, your real estate, your stocks, your privately held businesses. You're supposed to figure out what all that's worth. You're supposed to then compare what it's currently worth to your basis, right? What you paid to acquire it. And whatever the difference is, that gain, the exit tax wants you to assume that you actually realized that gain, that you sold all those assets and you actually got that money. And then they want you to pretend that that's income and then pay taxes on your pretend income on those pretend gains. Now, clearly, that's not income. Income isn't what you pretend to earn. Income is what you've actually earned. Unrealized appreciation is not income, right? That's not what the 16th Amendment authorized. Look, and I've pointed this out. Congress cannot define what income is. That's why the Internal Revenue Code doesn't define income. It defines gross income, but it doesn't define income, right? If you say it's gross income is all income. Okay, well, what's income? Well, we didn't put it in the code because they can't define it in the code, because they can't change the Constitution with legislation. The court has decided what income means for the purpose of a direct tax not being apportioned. And it is realized gains, right? It is a gain that you must derive by actually realizing it. You have to earn money or sell something for a higher price than you paid for it and get more money, right? I paid $1 million. I sold it for $2 million. I have an extra $1 million cash. That's my gain. That they can tax. If I buy something for $1 million and I haven't sold it, and potentially if I did sell it, I could get $2 million, but I haven't sold it. I haven't derived the gain yet. So it's not subject to an income tax. If you tax the property before it's sold, it's a property tax, right? So if you put a tax on the property that somebody owns, if they expatriate, that is a property tax. Property taxes are still subject to the rule of apportionment. Look, if the purpose of the 16th Amendment was to get rid of the requirement to apportion direct taxes, it would have said so. It would have just said the requirement to apportion direct taxes is hereby repealed. And they could have referenced the two places in the Constitution. The only thing that the Constitution says twice, and there's only one thing that they say twice, and that's that direct taxes have to be apportioned. So the fact that they repeated it shows you how important it was. They really wanted everybody to know that direct taxes had to be apportioned. So they put it in there twice, right? Nothing else is in there twice, but the requirement that direct taxes be apportioned. So if the purpose of the 16th Amendment was to give the government the power to levy all direct taxes without apportionment, they would have done that. But they didn't do that. They specifically said that they could tax income without regard to apportionment, but just income. That means every other direct tax is still subject to the requirement that it be apportioned. And again, apportionment means that each state has to pay a proportion of the tax that's in proportion to its percentage of the population, which is obviously impossible when it comes to expatriation, because we don't know what states people are going to expatriate from. It would be impossible to ever apportion a exit tax, which is why they can't have an exit tax, right? There's no constitutional way to justify an exit tax. So they are challenging this, and I hope that, they argue it correctly. I may reach out to these lawyers just to give them, some extra information in case they don't have it. I think I have a lot of knowledge, thanks to my father and the years I spent with him on understanding direct taxes and the constitutional requirements surrounding them and income and the legal meaning of income and all that. And so, maybe I have a little bit to add, but this is a big case. This is an important case that Roger Ver really needs to win, because if he wins it, then we eliminate the exit tax. And that is a big deal, because then everybody is free to leave if they want to, which means the government has to treat us a lot better if they know we can leave, especially, the entrepreneurs, the wealthy people that would be subject to this tax. If they could leave, they might leave unless we lower taxes, which is what we should do. But we need a smaller government. The whole idea that, somebody should have to pay this tax if they leave. I mean, first of all, you only pay taxes because you're a citizen and you're enjoying the privileges of being an American citizen. Once you decide you don't want to be a citizen anymore and you leave the country, why should you be responsible for paying the taxes anymore, right? You're going to pay the taxes of wherever you move to. You shouldn't have to pay the taxes of the country you left. Pay the taxes of the country that you move into, right? Because now you're there, right? So you should support the government that you're living under, not the government that you decided to leave. But, there are some people that think, well, you can't make a lot of money in this country and then leave with all the gains. Well, why not? I mean, first of all, people that make a lot of money pay a lot of taxes while they're making that money. It's not like they didn't pay their fair share. But if I've amassed a large fortune and I leave, I don't owe the country anything. I worked hard for that fortune. I made the fortune, and I made the fortune by enriching others. Remember, that's how capitalism works. You get rich by enriching everybody who voluntarily does business with you. It's not like, hey, you made a lot of money, so you got to give something back when you leave. It's not like you ever took anything out. You don't get rich by taking out. You get rich by putting in, right? The money you make is a reflection of the work that you did, of the effort you put in, of the benefits that society derived from your work. People voluntarily purchased your products or your services because it improved their lives, and it improved them by more than the cost. Otherwise, they wouldn't have voluntarily bought it. So you don't owe anybody anything when you leave. If you decide you don't want to live in the country anymore, then you could go. And once you've left, you have no further obligation to pay taxes. And if you have a lot of unrealized gains and you didn't realize them while you still lived in the country, if you realize them after you left, well, that's too bad for the government doesn't get that money. They should have treated you nicer. They should have made it so you stayed, right? If they make it so you want to go, well, then they lose that tax revenue. And that's really where all this exit tax came from, right? Wealthy people decided they wanted to leave, and the government wanted to make it harder for them to do that. I don't want it. I want it easy to leave, because if it's easy to leave and the government knows that, well, then they've got to be more responsible. They've got to keep taxes low enough so that people aren't going to want to leave, right? That's what you want. That's why all these governments always want to shut down all the tax havens, right? I like the tax havens because they keep government smaller. It's competition. If the government knows that you can leave, they have to treat you good. If they know your money can leave, they have to treat your money good. So this is a very important case for a lot of reasons. The Moore case was another case on apportionment. That didn't go the way I hoped, although 2 justices voted that it was unconstitutional. But this is even simpler than the Moore case, because in the Moore case, the corporation had realized the income, and the IRS said, well, we're going to attribute that realized gain to the shareholders, right? And the court bought that argument. I think the majority was wrong. I still don't think it's income, but at least there was a realization on the part of the corporation. But with the exit tax, there's no realization by anybody. No income has been realized at any level. It's just a pure property tax measured by the amount that the property is appreciated. But the way they measure the tax doesn't change the nature of the tax. It's a direct tax on your property. And if it's not apportioned, it's unconstitutional. And it wasn't apportioned, it is unconstitutional. So let's have the justices rule this way, reinforce the fact that we can never have a wealth tax in this country or a tax on unrealized gains. This case will force the court to rule on that. They wiggled out of it with the Moore case. So this is a very important case. I am very thankful that somebody finally has challenged the constitutionality of a tax that I've always thought was unconstitutional. I've never paid it myself. You can't challenge the tax until you've had to pay it. So he's in a perfect situation now because he's being charged with evading it. So now they've opened the door for this constitutional challenge, and I hope it goes all the way and he wins. And this could do a lot to making the country a much better place by forcing the politicians to treat the citizens a lot nicer, knowing that if they don't, they could leave without having to pay any kind of exit tax for the privilege of leaving.